Hello everyone, Andy here, and here's what you can look forward to in today's episode.
In today's episode, in Team Season Preview 27 out of 32, I was joined by Atlanta Falcons fan Rob Monk as we preview the team's upcoming season. Rob discusses the off-season.
To lose someone like Grady Jarrett was disappointing.
Rob also discusses Michael Penix Jr. going into his first full year as the starting quarterback.
He's had a few games where he could play. He's coming into the season knowing that he's the starting quarterback.
And Rob predicts the team's overall record in our win-loss-tie segment. Hope you all enjoy.
Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. I am, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, here for another team season preview, team 27 out of 32, and the team today is the Atlanta Falcons. Now with me, I've got a returning guest. He was on last season's Falcons season previews and the ones before. Today we're joining on the show is Rob Monk. Rob, how are you? How are things?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, Andy. It's good to be back. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Yeah, all good. Can't complain. Just looking forward to the season beginning. And obviously almost finishing the season previews now, which, once again, I'd be happy to finish because it is a lot of evenings spent recording these. So, it's fun doing them, but it'd be nice to have that couple of weeks break before the season starts.
Yeah. Have you learned much about any teams which you were a bit unsure of while you've been doing these? Anything interesting you found out?
From memory, definitely some I can't think top of my head. That's something I haven't really thought about, to be honest. I've just done the recordings. I've learned which teams' fans are more positive than the others in our our season previews. I've learned that definitely a lot of fans that have either optimistic views or very pessimistic views. So it's been good to learn the fan bases this year and their thoughts on the season to come. And of course, that'll be you doing the same thing later on today.
Yeah, and the off-season's sort of, in a way, my favourite part of the season because I seem to get a little bit more optimistic. And then when the season starts and it all falls apart, then I'm like, I knew this would probably happen. And I've sort of fallen into the same trap a little bit again this year. I do think this year's going to be a little different for us, hopefully. But like last year, I was pretty optimistic. And then obviously the season didn't turn out too good, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm looking now at your overall season predictions, do you remember what your prediction was a year ago for your team's prediction, record-wise?
9-8 or 10-7, probably something like that.
11-6.
Wow, that was optimistic.
I mean, only 3 wins out. The team went 8-9. So there's been more out there predictions in terms of people getting it right and wrong. But I think it wasn't too far off.
I think the thing with last season is we should have definitely done better than what we did, and we lost probably 3 or 4 games I can think off the top of my head that were close, where we were in a good position and then or felt like we were going to go on and win that game and then ended up losing it in a disappointing manner. And especially in our division as well. I don't think 11 and our schedule as well. I don't think 11-6 last year was probably out of the question with the way that we played in some of those games that we did end up losing. But, that's the way it is. That's sport and the Atlanta Falcons. And I'm looking forward to another season of being absolutely bang average again, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, at one point you were 6-3 after your week 9 win against the Cowboys, but then only won 2 more games to finish the season. You lost to the Saints. You lost 4 in a row, and then you lost the final 2 games. I think looking at the overall standings of I can't find the standings right now, but you win just a couple of those games and you'd have won the division. So I think cut out those mistakes and it should be hopefully a better season there. Have you watched Quarterback this year, the Netflix series with Kirk Cousins, of course, your quarterback that season?
Yeah, I watched it. I was last year when we signed Kirk Cousins. The size of the deal obviously was a bit controversial, shall we say? Although it does have a get out for the Falcons at the end of this season. And whilst I think we overpaid for, Kirk and his age and the injury just come off, he was a lot better than what we'd had since losing Matt Ryan. So I was relatively optimistic that he could come in and do a job if he stayed fit. And I think he did that in some degree during that early stretch. And then obviously in that Saints game where he hit his shoulder and he obviously tried to power through it. And, it just fell apart from there. And we were probably too late in making that switch to Michael Penix. And yeah, that excitement in the off season sort of dissipated pretty quick, and we had a disastrous end to the season in a way, or second half of the season.
I kind of know how you feel with the Dolphins in there. Certainly 2022, 2023, how bad the second half of the season's been. I know how you feel. Let's head on to the off-season. So including free agency signings and also re-signings, you've brought in the likes of Leonard Floyd, Mike Hughes, Jordan Fuller, as well as Storm Norton, Kadero Hodge, Divine Diablo, Mike Ford, Kevin King, as well as D. Alford, amongst many others. And also out include the likes of Matthew Judon, Justin Simmons, as well as Grady Jarrett, Drew Dolman, Eddie Goldman. And in the draft, you only took 5 players in the entire draft, and these were linebacker Jalen Walker, 15th overall, linebacker James Pierce, 26th overall, safety Xavier Watts, 96th overall, safety Billy Bowman, 118th overall, and then tackle Jack Nelson, 218th overall. Rob, for you, your take on the team's overall offseason?
In terms of losing players, Drew Dalman was disappointing. Obviously, Grady Jarrett as well. He's been there a long time. And to lose someone like Grady Jarrett was disappointing. Drew Dalman as well, who went the same place as Jarrett to the Chicago Bears and got paid there. Both players that, would have loved to have kept, but ultimately couldn't afford. We did try and keep Grady Jarrett. I think, we offered him what would have been less money than what he's gone and got at the Bears, and decided that, what might be his last payday at sort of his age or whatever, he was going to go for that. So you can't really blame him for that. Drew Dalman as well was probably a casualty of a cap situation. I'm sure that the front office would have loved to have kept Dalman as well. He spoke about Matt Judon, that trade with the Patriots didn't really work out for us there. Justin Simmons, I think, had statistically one of his worst seasons ever. So I would have taken Simmons back based on the player that he is and his history, even though it didn't really work out last year. And ultimately, that's not happened. And then we talk about players that we've brought in. Leonard Floyd, I think, he's a good addition. I think since 2020 or something, he's averaged between 8.5 and 10.5 sacks a season. I can't remember the last time that we probably had anybody with those sort of numbers. But I think if the Falcons can get him in and he can have one more productive year, then that'll help us while we're getting, the likes of Walker and Pierce embedded into that team as sort of like a bridge or rotational piece. Diablo linebacker, Troy Anderson has started on the physically unable to perform list. So, there is that slot there next to Caden Ellis, which is currently vacant. So, I think he'll come in and start there while ever Troy Anderson's trying to work back to fitness, and then they'll sort of battle out for that position between them if Anderson can stay fit for any length of time. I suppose not really blown away with that signing, but it's sort of in the area that we were shopping in, and I think he has got potential that he could be better than what people might perceive him to be. Other signings, Morgan Fox, sort of, I suppose, Grady Jarrett replacement in a way, if you like. Cheap option there. I think he's a steady player. He'll do a steady job for us, and that's probably what we need there on our defensive line. And Jordan Fuller, with all the expectation around him and his career, it's not really worked out for him. And I don't think, when I look at the rookies, the two rookies that we've signed at safety as well, and a depth chart, I wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Fuller didn't make the squad. But he's, he's signed on a cheap deal. So if he does make the team, then it's friendly towards our cap position, and we'll just see where it goes from there.
Yeah, and I think what I found interesting is the fact they've gone out and got, really gone out and dressed some positions of need in the draft. You think about their first two picks, both linebackers, their next two picks, both safeties. I think, whilst there are other areas of the field where maybe they could look at as well, I do like the fact they've gone out and just tried to bolster, that position by not just giving you one player, but two players in that position. So I think, one thing they're just adding depth, they're adding, quality. And I think that, certainly, think about the two linebackers you took in the first round. I mean, they were very highly touted players. James Pierce was someone that was spoken about a lot when it comes to, his time in Tennessee Vols and his time at college. And people were, I think, surprised to see him, so low down. I think many were thinking he'd go maybe a few picks earlier, but I think you look as well the fact that you got someone like Javon Walker who isn't moving far. He's staying in the same state, and I think that he is someone that particularly had a really good time at college. And I think to get both of them in the first round, I think is maybe unlike last year's draft, maybe some actual good business in the draft from your team this year.
Yeah, I think we've had a good draft, and when you look at it, I think the value that we've got from the players that we've got has been really good. I think Falcons fans were crying out for the front office to have a defensive draft, and that is what we needed, and that is what they've gone and done. And the Jalen Walker pick, him being available there at 15 for us, was sort of a no-brainer. Obviously, the James Pierce pick has drawn criticism, shall we say, from Falcons fans and the media. Not so much about the pick, but the way that the pick was obtained in the trade. And I think the reason that he probably fell to where he did was there were some concerns about his attitude and application and things like that. Probably not so many concerns over his ability, but in a way, again, pass rush is something that we've not had much of for over a decade. And was the price high? I think that'll be determined by whatever season we have this year, because we gave up a second and a seventh for a third round pick, essentially, in my mind. Yeah, we gave up our first next year, but we got a first this year. So the real value is going to be determined on where would the Falcons pick in next year's draft. And if it's early in the draft or mid in the draft, then people are going to say that the value was even worse. I think if the later on in the draft, the more valuable that becomes. And, we're not going to win the Super Bowl, and we're not going to be picking that late. But in a way, I'm okay with it. This draft, they've gone all in and said, we need to fix the pass rush. We're going to be aggressive in the way that we trade. We're going to give up, a first next year, a second this year, and the seventh this year. And we're going to get a first this year and a third in return. And like I say, you wouldn't give up a second and a seventh for a third, obviously. But that was the perceived cost, or the deal that they did, the cost that they agreed to trade first this year with next year. And but coming out with two players like that can hopefully contribute to our pass rush for years to come, yeah, I'm okay with it, shall we say. And then you talk about Xavier Watson, Billy Bowman. I think, again, they're both seen as players that could have gone higher and didn't. And, that's in a way the story of the draft. When you look at, me and you, our draft boards, if we make a draft board, is going to be way, way different to an NFL team's draft board. And even so-called media experts, their draft boards don't always align very well with what NFL teams do. So the NFL teams that have got all the experts and all the scouts, they're doing different things to media experts and things like that. But I think they're two picks to be excited about as well for the future. So yeah, I think value-wise and filling needs and adding depth, I think we've done that. Re-signings from our current team were more of the, with the exception of Mike Hughes, who's going to be a starting corner for us, the rest of them were depth, rotational, backup pieces, which, again, you need those in your team. So if we didn't re-sign them, we'd have to go and get them from somewhere else anyway. So, yeah, I'm okay with that as well. And I think, as I've said before, we're slightly hamstrung by our biggest cap hit this year is Kirk Cousins, who, if all goes well, is not going to see the field, which is unfortunate and probably not the way any team wants their cap to be spent. But, we have a way to get out of that at the end of this season. So we ride it for one more year, and then that situation gets a lot better as well.
Yeah, I think going back to your point about draft experts, I think nothing shows the unpredictability of the draft. The fact that Tom Brady, widely seen as the best quarterback of all time, 199th overall. Travis Kelce, one of the best tight ends of all time, 5th rounder. Tyreek Hill, one of the best receivers of his generation. He was also, I believe, a 5th or 4th rounder. He wasn't exactly a 1st or 2nd round pick. So, and you flip that to Jamarcus Russell, Ryan Leaf, many others. Actually, no names coming to mind, but all the hype. Even Isaiah Simmons, who was highly touted coming out of college, was seen as very could play multiple positions. Whether it's been with the Cardinals, whether it's been with the Giants, all hasn't worked out. So yeah, certainly, I think one thing you can guarantee from the draft is that you just don't know really how a player is going to work out. Speaking of the draft, of course, we talked a year ago about Michael Penix, of course, drafted just a few weeks after he did sign Kirk Cousins to that aforementioned deal. And it caused a lot of a stir. It caused a lot of a stir amongst fans. I did a tweet about it, sort of criticising the fan base, but with how it's gone, Penix looks to be the guy going forward. Had a very small sample size in 2024. Only had 61 completed passes, only 105 attempted passes. So that was all in 5 games, and 2 of those games were games where we had, in total, between those 2 games, 5 attempted passes. So very small sample size. Came out with 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. His most recent game was an overtime loss to the Panthers. This was where he threw for 2 touchdowns and 1 interception for 312 yards. So it sort of is almost like his first season. It'd be first season in full, provided he doesn't get injured. But it's a big year for him to sort of show everyone that it was worth drafting him that high, because right now it's a very small sample size. For me so far, I haven't seen enough to really be convinced, but I think give me a full season of Penix, then I think myself and a lot of NFL fans may be convinced that he is the guy. But for you, as someone who watches the Falcons way more than I do, week in, week out, what's your take been on Penix in his few games he's played last season, and what are your thoughts on him going into the current season?
First, just to go back to the draft last year, again, that was another pick, excuse me, which again had a lot of controversy around it because we've just given Kirk Cousins a $180 million contract and then a few weeks later gone and drafted somebody 8th overall in the same position. And yeah, I was like, wow, what at the time? But, when I listened to the reasoning behind it and thought about it myself, it sort of does make sense. You talk about finding a quarterback and, we can talk about quarterbacks that have been drafted 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th overall and had awful careers. But if we'd have got Kirk Cousins in and had 2 good seasons where we'd made the playoffs and we're picking 15th, 20th, whatever it might be in the draft, suddenly those quarterbacks that are going to go 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th overall aren't on the table for you anymore. And then Kirk Cousins retires after 2-3 years, or you let him go, or you decide to let him go out of his contract, you pick him later in the 1st round. What do? Is there somebody on the free agency market that you can go and get? Yeah, okay, fine. Or no, there's nobody on the free agency market. So what do? And nobody wanted to go back to, a Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder sort of situation that we had before. So the fact that, look, we're picking 8th overall and we hope as a team that this is the last time we're going to be picking around this spot for quite a while. We might as well take our guy now. We can get out of Kirk Cousins' contract in 2 years, even if he plays relatively well. Penix can sit behind him for 2 years and learn, and then we go there with our starting quarterback. So I was okay with it as well. And then obviously it transpired to be a good thing. And, with what happened with Kirk Cousins, it's a good job that we did draft Michael Penix. And in a way, it was good as well that we managed to see a little bit of him before the end of the season so he could get a little bit of experience under his belt. I think he played well in the games that he played. But obviously the main test is going to be this season. And I think, it was his first year in the league. It was Zach Robinson's first season at the Falcons. So he's going to have a full season last year and a full season this year of trying to understand what Zach Robinson is trying to achieve and the playbook and everything. He's had a few games where he could play. He's coming into the season knowing that he's the starting quarterback. He's done off-season workouts with the likes of Drake London and Kyle Pitts. So, yeah, I mean, there's every reason to be optimistic. He's not going to be the most mobile. He's not going to get the most yards with his legs, but, he's also got an absolute cannon of an arm and probably one of the strongest arms in the league. So, yeah, we just got to, I'm treating this season like his rookie year in a way, because it's going to be his first full season playing as a starter in his 2nd year. And we'll just see where it goes there. But I'm quietly optimistic. I don't think he's going to be a top 10 or even top 15 quarterback, although I'd love to be proved wrong. But I don't think he's going to be a 25 to 32 either. I think somewhere between, if he can be 16 to 24 in his first year, I might even, be underplaying it there. That might just be me trying to play it safe a little bit. But yeah, I'm optimistic.
Yeah, and only one of 2 starting quarterbacks in the NFL to be a left-hander. Only him and Tua Tagovailoa that, of course, both our teams. So we are in that luxury exclusive club of having left-handed starting quarterbacks. Speaking of starters, running back Bijan Robinson is heading into his 3rd season as a running back in the NFL. I mean, his first season was good. He had 976 yards and 4 touchdowns. But last season is where he really took off. 1,456 yards and 14 touchdowns. He's fastly becoming a star in this league. Now, you may already view him as a top 5 running back, but how good do you think he can be in terms of his legacy in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, running backs, when you talk about legacy, is always difficult, right? Because they get battered and bruised, especially if they're used as workhorses. So, it's longevity is going to be the main thing for Bijan. His ability is not in question. I think, you said maybe I already view him as a top 5 running back. I definitely do in obviously the league as it is last season and this season. I think he will be a top 5 running back again this season easily. But yeah, the concern over running backs and is the longevity of them and can they stay fit and can they stay healthy? And so far he's managed to do that. And I hope he can continue to do that. I would, not to the detriment of Bijan, but Tyler Algier, I'd like to see him get more snaps as well, because I do believe that he is capable of being a starter in this league in his own right as well. I think he showed that in his rookie season. Realistically, he's probably going to have to go to another team to realize that fully. But I think that can also help Bijan with that longevity aspect of, can we give Tyler some more snaps and take a little bit of pressure off him?
Tyler Algier, I think he's really good. I think that he's just unlucky in a sense that he is sort of behind a generational star in Bijan Robinson. I think you look at whenever I see him play, he always just puts up numbers. He always, puts up a good performance. And I think absolutely, as you said, give him a chance to be a number 1 back somewhere. I think you'll see him further elevate his game. And I think that, of course, no guarantee, because we've seen Tony Pollard be a great number 2 running back, and then he became number 1 in Dallas. It didn't quite have the same impact. But from what I've seen from Algier, he's just so good. And I want to see him get more snaps, because I think he is generally good. Almost what you said. He is generally good to be, playing for, I'd say, a lot of the teams playing now. I think you give him, I think the Bengals have taken over Chase Brown, arguably. I think the Cowboys will certainly take him, I think, in their running back room. Many of the teams, I think, would generally love to have him as a guy. I mean, I think the Dolphins, I would take him at the Dolphins if we're going for a run-heavy offense, which McDaniel should do more because of his run game history with the 49ers. But certainly, there's a lot of teams out there that I think he could genuinely start for. And I think, and for the Falcons yourselves, you can get some trade value out of him. I think if you want to go for the 2 running back set kind of plays, fair enough. But if you're not going to use him fully, then certainly you could get a few draft picks out of it. Or I think that he should in the next year be looking at, if he doesn't get as many snaps again this year, I think that'll be a good thing for him. I think, and the team. I think overall to get some value back for him is for him to move out and be a number 1 back somewhere.
Yeah, and I think feel free to fact check me on this as well, but I don't believe he's ever fumbled the football either.
Oh wow!
Which is incredible. I can see your eyes moving. I'm sure you probably are.
I'm looking it up. It's an amazing stat. It's true. That's I'm sure it is, to be fair. But that sounds an amazing stat. But yeah, I don't ever call him really. Now I'm thinking about it, ever really making a mistake. I'm sure there is probably one he has made, but let's have a look. So here we are. So stats actually don't look great. He got 3 touchdowns, only 137 yards, which is surprising considering how good I think he can be. Fumbles. Where are the fumbles? Yeah, you're right. 0 fumbles. 0 fumbles. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and I think I would like to see. He's so strong and powerful. I would like to see him used more in 3rd down situations, so short yardage situations, red zone situations, where we're close to the goal line. I think he's just seems to have that brute strength about him that he just runs like a train and you're not going to stop him. And yeah, we've sort of digressed a little bit off from Bijan Robinson there, but I think Bijan is for me a top 5 running back, and I'm sure that he'll produce to that level again this season. Kyle Pitts is in there as somebody who's never really took off. But I think when you look at Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, should be three sort of players that teams have got dread about facing. And I'm hoping that Kyle Pitts can finally sort of realize that potential and we can really sort of see that this year. And then Tyler Algier as well, just backing up Bijan, maybe getting some extra snaps. And yeah, I think our offense could be pretty formidable.
Yeah, that Kyle Pitt situation, I think, I feel like I'm hearing it every year. It's going to be his breakout year, and every year I never see it. So I'm not expecting much out of him. But you never know. You never know how it could turn out. But I just think that he's had too many chances now. He's had enough games in the NFL to show me that. I think it's unfair because I think if he hadn't had the hype around him from the Gators, I think maybe you could look at him and go, "Oh, he's actually not too bad." But I think the amount of hype he had going into the NFL, seems one of the best ever prospects at the position, hasn't quite lived up to that expectation.
Yeah, and it is disappointing, especially because of where we drafted him, 8th overall again. And it has been disappointing that he's not sort of reached what everybody thought he would be. And I am pretty down on him, especially after last season. There are a few points where I just thought there's no point in him even being on this team. And I'm just hoping that, it's sort of last chance saloon for him now, and with the Falcons anyway. And I know what would happen in typical Falcons fashion. We'd let him go and he'd go on and be absolutely incredible for somebody else, which is bound to happen. But while he's still on the team, I've still got that glimmer of hope for this season that, he can pick it up and we can build that offense around Bijan, London, two players which are phenomenal in their own right. And I think London is sort of now getting, some hype around him, more hype around him, and a bit of excitement from around the league about, the sort of player he is and what heights he can reach. And having Pitts as well somewhere in that conversation would scare teams when they come to players.
Well, let's head into our next segment, which is win, lose, or tie. So for those of you that are new to the podcast, each person that comes on, each fan that comes on, predicts their team's overall record, and they answer each game with win, lose, or tie. So week 1 for you, Rob, is a home game against the Buccaneers. Win, lose, or tie?
I've gone for a win on this one.
Okay, so then week 2, the first of back-to-back road games, you're traveling to the Minnesota Vikings.
Loss.
Okay, so then week 3, you're taking on, in Carolina, the Panthers.
Only a win, obviously.
Week 4 is a home game against the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, the start of some tough games on this one, and we should have beat them last year, that's for sure. But I think, obviously, looking at it realistically, as of now, I've got a loss on that one.
Okay, so you got a very early bye this year of week 5. So week 6, you're hosting the Buffalo Bills.
I've gone for a loss on that one as well.
So week 7 is a game against, in Santa Clara, the 49ers.
I've gone for a loss on that one as well.
Well, week 8, which is a game that I'm sure I'll get you on for, either to preview it or review it. You're hosting the Miami Dolphins.
And I was torn on this one, Andy. I'm not going to lie to you. I think it is a tough one to call. And I think realistically, depending how those first 7 weeks go, this one could be real tough to call. If I do the preview, we might have a better idea on how we're performing. But I have, just so I don't upset you, I've gone for a loss.
Thank you very much. Sticking with the AFC East in week 9, as you take on, in Foxborough, the New England Patriots.
Which is a win.
Okay, now next team is a team that used to be in the AFC East. the Indianapolis Colts, and this game is in Germany. Now, before we do the prediction, are you going to this game in Germany?
I am not.
Ah.
I really wanted to go. Obviously, I was at a course that morning and I ended up something like 800,000th in the queue. And by the time we got to a break, I'd been admitted while my phone was in my pocket and timed out.
Oh no!
One of my friends, he was also in the queue and he managed to get in. By the time we did, the tickets that were available were like 350 euros each. And yeah, it was hard because I really, really, really wanted to go. I love Germany as a country. And obviously I want to go and see the Falcons whenever I can. But we just decided that for the cost of it, we decided not to bother. So unfortunately, I won't be there.
Well, that is a heartbreaking story. I'm not going to lie. Hopefully, something changes. Hopefully, you find a late ticket that goes on sale, because if there's tickets still available, for example, that are worth 300 quid, at some point they'll bring them down near the time. So you never know. You might find a cheap deal later on, but you never know. But regardless, whether you're watching it there or watching it on the TV, win, lose, or tie?
A win.
Okay, so then week 11 is a home game against the Panthers.
A win.
So going on to week 12, you're going on the road to the New Orleans Saints.
Win.
Okay, so I didn't mention I did well not to mention when you mentioned the Patriots, 28-3. I managed to avoid bringing that up.
Right, Andy. Well, it's been great being on your podcast, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.
Yeah, I've been trying to name bowls for each, like one episode each time. One time per episode, I will sort of give a game a bowl. I should have gone for that, but I was feeling nice. And I didn't want to, upset you on the pod.
You already have.
Next up is week 13. You are on the road to the Jets.
Win.
Okay, so then week 14 is a home game against the Seattle Seahawks.
Win.
Okay, so then week 15 is a road game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I've gone for a loss on that one.
Okay, so then your final road game of the regular season is a trip to Arizona and the Cardinals.
Which I've gone for a win for.
Okay, so that means then your final two games are both at home, and the first one is against the Los Angeles Rams.
I've gone for a loss on that one, although, I'm not quite sure whether Matthew Stafford is going to be what Matthew Stafford is going to be like during this season at all. I don't know whether he'll actually get there or not, whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo or whether they go and try and trade for somebody like Kirk Cousins, maybe. But yeah, I've gone for a loss anyway on that one.
Yeah, I think Cousins is a prime contender to get traded mid-season. Think about if a team loses a star quarterback. Say, for example, the Buffalo Bills lose Josh Allen, or say, for example, or even someone like the Giants, where Winston's not working out, Wilson's not working out, and they want to try and keep Dart on the bench and learn from players. You can even look at that. The Jets, if Fields isn't working out, or I think the Saints as well. If either Shuck or kind of think who their second quarterback is. That's Rattler. Thank you. That was it was bugging me what his name was. I think Kirk Cousins is a prime contender. If Penix comes out and does well, you may want to keep him around, because I think he is a good person to learn from, how he conducts himself. Anyone who has watched both series he's been in with the quarterback series, I've always been a fan of how Cousins sort of conducts himself. And I think as a professional, I think a bit like Russell Wilson, I think he's the kind of guys you want to learn from, maybe rather than certain other quarterbacks in the league. Speaking of New Orleans, that is your final game of the regular season, and week 18 to the final time. This episode, Rob, win, lose, or tie?
Win.
Okay, so that means, according to you, the Falcons will finish 10-7.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it'll be between you and the Bucks for the division. I do feel like I'm sure you and your good friend Dan Hughes will be sure texting each other about this, and that'll be a tense one in your WhatsApp group. But yeah, certainly that's going to be. I don't see any way the Saints or Panthers are. Panthers maybe with Bryce Young getting better, but I think if it's not the Falcons or Bucks, I'll be shocked if one of those teams don't win the division.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I think it should be between the Bucks and the Falcons, and the Bucks are probably more fancied to win the division, I would say. But I think I've got a lot of belief in us this year. I think we should have won it last year, as I've already mentioned, by the way that we played in some of the games we threw away, and I think we've got better this year. So yeah, fingers crossed. Who's doing the Bucks one for you? Is it Murph?
It is Murph. Yeah, he's due to come on later on this week. We meant to come on last week, but things got in the way. So this week he'll be coming on. And yeah, he's not the next guest, unfortunately, in terms of your next question. But certainly, it'll be one to watch for those. If you're a Falcons fan, if you're a Panthers fan, if you're a Saints fan, or you're a Buccaneers fan, that'll be one to definitely tune into.
Yeah, I was out of interest as well, seeing what he'd got the Bucks down to do. But I suppose we'll have to listen in and find out on that one.
Well, I remember a couple of years ago, he was very down on Baker Mayfield. He was very down on Baker. I think he had generally one of the lowest record predictions of all the teams that year. I think there was the Cardinals with Ollie and Sam. Was that the same year? Well, yeah, it was the same year. They were some of the highlight ones that where fans were very unoptimistic about the season ahead. But I can see him being a lot more positive, especially with how the last 2 years have gone with Baker Mayfield. Moving on though to our final segment, which is going to be Fan Asks Fan. So in a brand new segment to this year's off-season season predictions, each fan that comes on answers the question from a previous guest, whilst also then asking the next guest a question. So Rob, our last guest was in our Texans season preview, which was Texans fan Ewan from the Turn Up For What podcast, and he wanted to ask you, Rob, either Falcons or non-Falcons, which player do you think has had the best off-the-field story in NFL history?
Wow, wow, what a question.
Yeah, there's some questions that are a lot easier to sort of think on the spot. Then we had Ewan answer the question about favorite touchdown of all time. We had Panthers fan Cake answer a question about which former player he liked to meet the most in a fan party. So this one, I can imagine, would take a lot of thinking, especially when it's not to do with the NFL necessarily.
I think Kurt Warner.
Oh, the stacking shelves in the supermarket story.
Yeah.
No, I like that. It's a good story, and it's such a good story that it's actually been made into a film. So it's definitely a good story to go with. So Rob, now it's time for you to end the show with your question to our next guest.
Right. Well, yeah, this is. I'd not thought of a question so interesting, shall we say, as the one that I've just had. So I'm going to go with who is the next guest on your podcast. Who is their dark horse? Not dark horse. Who is their dark horse to make the playoffs this season?
Interesting. Now, the guest we've got planned to come on, I would be shocked if he says his team, because his team, I don't think any great shakes, but he might be an optimistic fan and say his own team. It'll probably be made clear if his prediction says they win 12, 11 games. I think that would be almost a signal of who his answer would be. But we'll see on that one if it is even this guest that arrives, because sometimes things do happen beyond our control. So, for example, this guest who we've got planned on next was actually meant to come on last week. He got last minute Oasis tickets, so that's absolutely a fair enough reason to to bail, because I would certainly do the same thing, because I've been trying so hard to get tickets myself. I was in the bit where you pay for the Cardiff show, and I got kicked out as I was putting my details in, my card details. So there's been quite a few friends of the show that have gone. We mentioned this before. We've had Matt Cullen, Greg Kett, Tom Morton, Dan North, many others. Murph is one of them as well. He went to a show, and so many other people I've seen on my Instagram from school, from uni. So yeah, it's I would certainly do that. So yeah, certainly hopefully this guest comes on, and I'm intrigued to know whether he does go for his team. But there we are. That is the end of the episode, the end of our Falcons 2025 season preview. So thank you, Rob, for coming on today.
No, thank you again for having me. Really enjoyed it. Always enjoy coming on and chatting with you. So yeah, it's been great.
Well, good having you on, and we said it before, but we're having you on, I'm sure, during the season, especially when the Falcons do play the Dolphins in Week 8. It's the preview or review the game. But in the meantime, this has been the Across the Pod NFL podcast, our 2025 Atlanta Falcons season preview. I have been, as ever, your host today, Andy Davis, with our guest, the Falcons fan, Rob Monk, and we'll see you guys for our next team's season preview. See you then.